Huh. Seems like they've come out with a movie about Texas Roadhouse. Yeah, let's take a little click here. Whoa. Oh, there's a lot of fighting going on in this Roadhouse. I don't remember that happening in Texas. Roadhouse? Yes, can I please get a roll? When are you going to hand out the rolls? That's like the cameo of this movie. I can't wait to see the roll. Hey, please stop hitting each other. Please give me a roll. Okay. All right. Ah, this makes sense. This isn't Texas Roadhouse. This is Florida.
Roadhouse is a movie directed by Doug Liman and just came out on Amazon Prime about a week or two ago. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal and is a remake to the 1989 film Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. The synopsis on Google reads as follows. Ex-UFC fighter Dalton takes a job as a bouncer at the Florida Keys Roadhouse, only to discover that this paradise is not as it seems. Ooh, spooky. No, it's not. There's no horror elements at all. It's not scary at all. In fact, it's pretty cheesy and a pretty fun action movie. I have not seen the original 80s Roadhouse. I barely even knew it existed until this movie was being made, and I heard it was a remake to this 80s movie. But I found this movie to really emulate that 80s cheese with how over the top the fights and violence is. You know, people getting stabbed multiple times but being okay, and just a lot of goofy over the top action, which I found really cool and fun. There was actually a bit of a controversy with this movie when it came out because the director wanted it to be shown in theaters, but he had signed a deal with Amazon, or he made it seem that Amazon forced them to put it on streaming, which was a whole debacle. I think the movie simultaneously feels like a theater movie, but at the same time, just one of those action movies you'd watch at home. But what elevates it to a theater movie status for me, I think, is how they handle the action, because they edit it in such a way that you can see all that's going on. Like, I can see the little jump cuts, or there's like some type of staggering where you know some type of editing shenanigans is going on behind the scenes, but somehow it still looks really like real and good. Like, you just see people getting punched. You can see all the punching without any cutaways or like sloppy fight editing, which I really appreciated, and I felt like it really immersed me in the film. Just the way the camera doesn't cut away from the action and just is ongoing as if you are in there in this brawl that you'd most likely want to run away from but are stuck in. And the movie uses a lot of these long shots, not just for fights, but they were used to immerse you in the world as the camera just whips around at what Jake Gyllenhaal's looking at. And I felt like those moments really immersed me into like setting up the scale of the Roadhouse or the tropical area we're in. It really highlights the environment the movie's taking place in, and I really like that. Speaking of the environment, this movie's set in Florida, and it made me want to go on a vacation like tomorrow. You can feel this movie really loves the Florida location and kind of celebrates it in a way. With all the boat life, sandbars, beachside venues, tourist attractions, it really captures that tropical vibe very well. It's kind of funny that they explore a Florida town that's small enough to be like, you know, that small town feel. When I usually think of Florida, I think of huge Miami, but this is like a more isolated small town feel while still being in this tropical location, which kind of plays into the theming. There's this character in the movie that constantly talks about the theming of this movie, where she's basically like, this is like an old Western. And she's right, which it was cool that she brought that to light and pointed that out, but I feel like it came off a little too exposition-y at times when it kept happening and kept being brought up. It's like the director really honing in, or the writers being like, hey guys, this is kind of like a modern Western, you know? So it's a cool story structure. They just kept being on the nose with it and pointing to it. I feel like some of the side characters, including that girl that brings up the Western bit, were a little stiff at times, and I don't know how to explain it. They just didn't feel real enough. I don't know, like real people, but for the most part, they did a good job. They just had a little bit of stiffness to their performances. But otherwise, I really liked the side characters in this movie. I think it really adds a lot to the heartwarming aspects of this movie, which who would have thought the movie about punching people in the face and seeing every punch would be heartwarming, but it is. I really enjoyed these side characters. They kind of like filled in the Floridian atmosphere. and were fun to get attached to, which is one of my complaints, that a lot of these characters in the third act disappear. Well, some of them, it makes sense because something happens to them, but other ones, they're just not around. And I'm like, where did they go? You guys were fun. Let's bring you guys back. Or at least like talk to the main character one last time. Speaking of the main character, I thought Jake Gyllenhaal did a great job. It's a very unique character. Like, he's a really nice and courteous guy that's still like a super fighter, that type of guy that can just beat everybody up. But then as the movie goes on, he becomes more and more unhinged from past trauma and current events. So he ends up going bonkers. Jake Gyllenhaal really captures that shift very well. And that character really separates it from other action movies, I feel like, because it's just different. It's a unique version of a character like this. Billy Magnuson plays one of the main villains in this movie, and I've been following this guy since Game Night. I think he's a really fun actor. He does a good job in this movie. I feel like he's a little less utilized, but I really enjoyed his presence, and he was good at being that kind of like squirmy brat type of rich kid character with being an actual threat. Though, of course, with these type of characters, that bratty / slimy side always comes through. And then Conor McGregor comes in as like this side villain and becomes more of the main physical threat, as Billy Magnuson's more of the brains, he's more of the brawn, the actual like force to put up with Jake Gyllenhaal, the only guy that seems to be able to take him on. And he's just crazy from the jump. Like, he has this strut that he does. It's the funniest thing. He brings a lot of the 80s cheese, I believe. He's one of the biggest aspects that brings that 80s like grungy cheese, as he's just crazy and just yelling one-liners and like can't like park his vehicle. He just crashes into everything. He was a really fun villain. There's actually a lot of good humor in this movie. I mean, there's of course hit or miss one-liners that are kind of like, that wasn't the funniest, but like for the most part, I thought it hit more times than it missed. And especially if you go in expecting the more like 80s one-liner cheese, then I think you'll appreciate the humor a lot more. But yeah, like one of the henchmen specifically is really funny. His name was Mo, and he brought a lot of the good. He was a very funny character. I really enjoyed him. Might be my standout funny character for this movie. Just to touch on the action one last time, I think it struck a good balance of visceral realness and just over-the-top cartoony. Like, I think they toed that line really well. For example, a lot of the vehicle stuff, though, feels very over-the-top cartoony with how it's done. The CGI kind of is hit or miss when they use that in the movie. But otherwise, I think there was really good wound and practical blood effects and such. I feel like if you're an action fan, there's a lot of good over-the-top action to feast your eyes on. So Roadhouse, what did you like about the movie? What's your favorite part? One of my favorite parts actually happened after the movie, where my girlfriend introduced me to this great Family Guy bit about Roadhouse.
Here's your burger, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I need another $1.25.
Is that right? Keep the change. Roadhouse.
Peter, I don't think you should be driving with your feet.
Roadhouse.
Wait, why are you taking the back way home? There are so many turns.
Roadhouse. 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 Roadhouse.
So if I ever said Roadhouse throughout this review, that's why.
Roadhouse.